Everyone wants a driving intention, a reason for living. Having this gives people meaning, a sense of direction, and a feeling of having a defined place to belong in this world.
What if death is not an end, but a frequency shift? What if what we've called the afterlife is not a faraway place, but a change in the current, like tuning into a radio station most people don't realize exists? These questions haunted Nikola Tesla, not with fear, but with fascination. He wasn't looking for religion's answers or science's silence. He was searching for the field behind the field, the place where thought becomes light, where energy remembers. The electric thread that connects life and afterlife. Tesla once said, "The day science begins to study non-physical phenomena, it will make more progress in 1 decade than in all the previous centuries of its existence." He believed there was no true separation between what we call life and what we call death. There is only a shift in signal, a transformation of form, and more importantly, he believed that the human consciousness, like energy itself, does not end. It only reorganizes. This is the core of what they tried to hide. We live in a world wired for the material. If we can't weigh it, measure it, market it, it must not be real. But Tesla challenged that belief at every level. He spoke of vibration as the core of all things, and he implied that the same energetic laws which govern electricity might also govern spirit. He understood that the body is an instrument, but the soul is the current that flows through it. The question is, what happens to that current when the body stops working? In Tesla's view, it never disappears. It simply exits the shell, the container, and continues elsewhere, on a different bandwidth. He compared the human soul to waves of sound and light, continuing long after their initial point of origin. When a song plays, it doesn't vanish when the radio is turned off. It just continues on a frequency you can't hear without tuning in. Tesla believed death was much the same, and if that's true, then what we call the afterlife may not be after anything. It may be now, layered over this present moment, invisible to our limited senses but still vibrating, still alive. Ancient mystics hinted at this same truth. In the Upanishads, the sages said the soul is never born and never dies. In the Egyptian Book of the Dead, death is described not as an end but a return, to join the hidden ones to become light once again. Even Plato believed the soul came from the realm of forms and would return to it, carrying the lessons of this material plane. Tesla's view wasn't so different, but he went further. He wanted to understand the mechanics of it. Not just what the soul is, but how it moves, how it remembers, how it communicates, how it might even remain accessible. That's where things get uncomfortable for those in power. Because if Tesla was right, and human consciousness survives death as a frequency, then entire industries built on fear collapse. Control weakens. The illusion of finality, the terror of endings, the pressure to obey doctrines in order to avoid punishment, all of it falls away. People become sovereign, not afraid, not desperate, not easy to manipulate. Which is why the deeper layers of Tesla's work, his meditations on consciousness, light, vibration, and time, were dismissed, buried, and in some cases, literally seized. When Tesla died in 1943, his belongings were confiscated by government officials. Some say it was for national security. Others say it was because he'd discovered something that could upend not just technology, but our entire view of life and death. Here's where it gets even more fascinating. Tesla believed communication between dimensions was not only possible but natural. He thought the same frequencies that carried wireless signals could carry thought, intention, even memory. He once stated, "The brain is only a receiver." In the universe, there is a core from which we obtain knowledge, strength, and inspiration. He didn't say we generate it, he said we tune into it. And so, what if the afterlife is not the next world, but the next layer of signal? What mystics have called the astral, what dreams brush against, what near-death experiences often return from, changed and burning with clarity. Tesla's studies suggested that consciousness might work like energy circuits, storing, transmitting, and resonating based on intention. That we are beings of signal, not structure, and the death of the body simply removes the casing, not the code. If this is the case, then memory, identity, and awareness could survive death, not as ghosts, but as continued expressions of consciousness. You don't stop being you. You just stop being this version of you. What remains is your true essence, unburdened by time, form, or fear. A kind of conscious electricity that returns to the source field, perhaps even preparing to return again. But why hide this? Because people who believe life ends at death are easier to control. They fear loss. They fear non-existence. But someone who knows they continue, who senses they are infinite, is harder to intimidate. They start to live differently. They stop chasing approval. They trust their intuition. They stop obeying out of fear and start moving from truth. Tesla's ideas were never only about machines. They were about what powers those machines, what powers us. And if we dare to study his suppressed notes, not for gadgets, but for insight, we begin to see the threads he was trying to reveal, that we are not accidents, that consciousness is not confined to the skull, that we are connected by invisible signals to something far more intelligent, more ancient, more alive than we've ever been told. Memory never dies, the conscious archive of the soul. If energy cannot be destroyed, then neither can memory. That idea, simple on the surface, is one of the most radical truths buried beneath centuries of dogma and dismissed science. Nikola Tesla didn't just revolutionize the way we harness electricity, he challenged the very nature of perception, memory, and human consciousness. He believed that every thought, every feeling, every experience we've ever had leaves an energetic imprint, not just in our brain, but in a kind of universal archive. In his mind, memory wasn't stored in the body, it was stored in the field. To grasp what that means, we must first step beyond the limits of material thinking. The body, though vital, is not the container of all we are. It is a receiver, an interface. The real memory, Tesla suggested, lives in the vibrational field all around us. The field holds everything, past, present, and potential. It is not time-bound, it is alive. This echoes older teachings, ones shared by mystics and philosophers long before modern science tried to measure the soul. The Akashic records in Vedic philosophy describe a non-physical plane where all human knowledge, experience, and soul history are recorded. The ancient Egyptians believed that a person's ka, or spiritual essence, carried memories and identity into the afterlife. Plato taught that learning is remembering, anamnesis, a recollection of truths the soul already knows but forgets upon entering the body. Tesla, however, offered a framework that pointed to how this actually works. He believed that just as electrical energy carries information, like voices in a phone call or images across a Wi-Fi signal, consciousness does the same. When we die, the device shuts down, but the transmission doesn't stop. The signal continues. The memory field remains active. In other words, the personality might dissolve, but the deeper consciousness, the real you, remains encoded in the fabric of reality. And if the right frequency is reached, it can be retrieved, understood, even communicated with. This is the part that unsettled many in power, because Tesla wasn't speculating, he was experimenting. There are stories, buried in fragmented notes and first-hand accounts, that he attempted to build a device capable of tuning into post-human consciousness. Not a seance table, not mysticism cloaked in ritual, a real, working receiver, like a radio that could pick up the frequencies of disembodied awareness. He believed thought was a waveform, just like light or sound. If you could match its frequency, you could perceive it, even after death. Imagine that. A world where the so-called dead aren't gone, just speaking on a frequency we've never been taught to hear. Now consider what that does to your understanding of grief, of fear, of separation. It changes everything. But memory doesn't only matter after death. Tesla believed that understanding this field of memory could change how we live. That most of our suffering, emotional pain, unconscious habits, even illness, comes from unresolved energy stored in the invisible memory layer, not just from this life, but from others. In this view, healing is not just physical or mental, it's vibrational. You're not just treating a symptom, you're releasing a signal that's been echoing through your field, and when that happens, your present shifts. You think differently, you attract differently, you are different. The question then becomes, how do we access these memory fields? Tesla's answer was not through the mind alone, but through vibration, stillness, and intention. He believed that resonance, tuning into a certain frequency, was the key. He often repeated that if we wanted to understand the secrets of the universe, we had to think in terms of frequency, energy, and vibration. He wasn't being poetic, he was being literal. This is why so many ancient traditions used rhythm, chanting, sound, and breath to alter consciousness. They weren't trying to entertain. They were shifting frequency. They were tuning the body and mind like an antenna to receive signals stored in the deeper memory field, what Jung later referred to as the collective unconscious. When you enter a deep meditative state or a dream, or a moment of profound emotion, what you're really doing is accessing your field. Tesla suspected these moments weren't random. They were alignments, brief windows when your vibration matched the memory signal waiting for you. This is why in dreams we often feel familiar people, places or events that never happened in this life. Because time in this field doesn't flow in one direction, it spirals, and if you pay close attention, these dreams begin to form a pattern. Certain images return, certain places reappear, you begin to notice a subtle pull towards something ancient, something unfinished. That's your soul memory activating. That's your field guiding you back to what you came here to remember, release, or resolve. But in modern culture, we're taught to dismiss this, to call it imagination, coincidence, fantasy. We rush past the moment, we forget the dream, we ignore the sensation, and in doing so, we deny ourselves the very tools Tesla tried to develop, a way to reconnect to what the soul already knows. The tragedy is that many people die without ever realizing this, but the wonder is that it's never too late. Even now, as you read this, your memory field is responding. Words are triggering resonance, ideas are aligning. You're remembering something, not with your brain, but with your being. And this is the secret they try to bury. Because a person who knows they are more than their body, more than their past, more than their name, cannot be controlled. They are tuned in. They are aware. They begin to operate from a higher signal, and that signal changes everything. The emotional frequencies that open the veil. What if the doorway to the afterlife isn't locked, but vibrational? What if the barrier between this world and what lies beyond is not made of distance or time, but of frequency, and our emotions are the keys? Tesla's lesser-known theories suggested just that. While most people saw emotions as messy human experiences, fleeting and irrational, Tesla suspected something much deeper. He believed emotions weren't just internal reactions, but external signals. He saw them as vibrational signatures, each carrying a frequency that could either elevate or diminish our energetic state. In other words, emotions weren't random, they were code, and some emotions could align you with dimensions beyond what the eye can see. One of the most powerful among them? Grief. Not because it's pleasant, but because it's raw. In the stillness of loss, the soul becomes porous. If you've ever felt closer to a loved one after they passed, closer than you did when they were alive, you felt it. That strange moment where you know they're nearby, not metaphorically, literally. Not in your mind, but in your field. Tesla believed this wasn't your imagination. It was evidence of frequency overlap. The energy of your grief softened the signal, blurred the boundary, and allowed consciousness to reach through. But grief wasn't the only emotion with this power. Tesla also spoke of awe, the feeling that comes when you stand before a vast night sky, hear a symphony that shakes your chest, or feel the hush of a sacred space. Awe cracks the illusion of separateness. It reminds you, even if briefly, that you are more than a name and a schedule, that something grand is watching, and that you are part of it. Tesla believed awe was not just beautiful, it was tuning. It raised your frequency to meet the threshold of universal intelligence. Then there's love, not the kind printed on Valentine's cards, but the deep, magnetic, unconditional force that defies logic. Tesla believed true love had a measurable energetic field, and that it created resonance between people across time and space. He once hinted that love might be the only force strong enough to bend reality itself, something echoed in spiritual texts, from the Bible's claim that perfect love casts out fear, to Rumi's poetry, which speaks of love as a bridge between worlds. If grief opens the veil, awe tunes the signal, and love becomes the current, then you begin to understand how Tesla saw emotional states not as weaknesses, but as gateways. But why aren't we taught this? Because when you understand how powerful your emotions truly are, you stop trying to numb them. You stop medicating your grief. You stop dismissing your awe. You stop fearing the intensity of your love, and that makes you ungovernable. Emotionally aware, humans are not easy to manipulate. They are not addicted to distraction. They don't blindly obey systems that reward suppression. They feel, and in feeling, they become conscious. Tesla saw emotion and frequency as two halves of the same force. His experiments in vibration weren't limited to machines. He believed the human being was the ultimate receiver, and that every state of being carried a frequency signature. When tuned correctly, certain emotions didn't just elevate your mood, they altered your dimensional access. In mystical terms, this aligns with teachings from nearly every ancient tradition. The Egyptians prepared the heart for the afterlife, weighing it against a feather to see if it was light enough to pass through. The Tibetans taught that a calm mind at death led to a clearer transition between states of being. The mystics of Sufism spoke of the soul being drawn by love across the veils of existence, pulled by its remembrance of divine origin. These weren't poetic metaphors, they were encoded knowledge. So what does this mean for you? It means your emotional state is more than personal, it's cosmic. Every time you enter a true emotional frequency, whether it's grief, awe, or love, you're not falling apart, you're dialing in, you're brushing against the walls of the seen world and pressing your hand into the fabric of the unseen, you're remembering. Tesla believed this kind of remembrance could be strengthened, that with practice we could not only experience these moments, but sustain them, and in doing so, begin to consciously connect with the layers of reality beyond physical form. He theorized that when the heart and brain achieve coherence, when they beat and pulse together, you reach a state where communication with other planes becomes natural. Not mystical, not supernatural, simply natural, but it takes practice. Because the modern world is full of static, screens, noise, disconnection, emotional numbness. It's all a kind of interference. It keeps us in low-frequency loops. Tesla knew this. It's why he spent much of his life in solitude. Silence wasn't loneliness for him. It was signal clarity. In the quiet, in the emotion, in the space where your soul is raw, that's where the veil is thin. And that's also why they tried to hide it. Because a person who understands their emotional power becomes harder to deceive. They're not easily guilted, shamed, or led by fear. They feel, they listen, and they begin to hear the subtle call of something eternal. They become aware that the afterlife isn't only where we go, it's something already here, waiting for our frequency to meet it. Time is the illusion that hides eternity. If energy is eternal, and consciousness is energy, then why do we experience ourselves as bound by time? Nikola Tesla's theories, though often presented in the context of science, always hinted at something deeper, something metaphysical. He wasn't just concerned with machinery and electricity, he was obsessed with time, and more specifically how to break free from it. In the notebooks and interviews that survived censorship and suppression, Tesla repeatedly suggested that time was not what it appeared to be. He didn't see time as a river moving in one direction. Instead, he spoke of it as a field, a structure of interconnected moments that all exist simultaneously, only waiting for the right frequency of attention to make them visible. You're not walking through time, you're tuning into slices of it like stations on a radio dial. To fully grasp this, we need to let go of the comforting illusion that time flows in a straight line, from birth through life to death. Tesla challenged that idea entirely, and so did many before and after him. The ancient Greeks, for instance, had two words for time, chronos and kairos. Chronos is the ticking clock, linear, measurable time. But kairos is something else entirely. It's timeless time, sacred time, the moment where eternity breaks through the ordinary, the moment where the veil thins. Mystics, shamans, and yogis have long said the same, that in deep meditation or altered states time dissolves, that the past and future become visible, not as memory or imagination, but as living frequencies. Carl Jung called this the collective unconscious. The Hindus called it the Akasha. Tesla simply called it the field. But here's the key Tesla hinted at. It is your consciousness that moves, not time. You're not just remembering your past or imagining your future. You're traveling, with your inner awareness, through the structure of the unified field. This is why dreams can feel like lifetimes, why déjà vu hits you like lightning, why you can sit quietly and suddenly remember something you've never experienced in this life, because your consciousness was there. Now imagine this on a larger scale. If time is not linear, then death is not an ending. It's a shift of frequency, a movement through dimensions. Your soul doesn't stop, it simply stops tuning into the frequency of the physical body. This would mean that your future self already exists, your past self is still active in its own reality, and your current identity is just the point of focus your soul is choosing right now. Not because of fate, but because of what it needs to experience, resolve, or remember. And yes, that means reincarnation isn't just some spiritual fairy tale, it's a mechanism of consciousness. You are not becoming someone new in each life. You're tuning into different expressions of the same field. Each life is like a song on an album. Different melodies, but the same artist behind them all. Tesla saw this clearly. It's why he was so obsessed with frequency. He believed that if you could learn to consciously shift your vibrational state, you could access not only the minds of others, but even the selves you had been or would become. To him, this wasn't fiction, it was physics. And that brings us to a startling possibility. Time isn't hiding death, it's hiding your eternity. You were never meant to believe that life begins at birth and ends at death. That illusion keeps you small, it keeps you obedient, it keeps you afraid. Because if you knew that you were never just your body, that the you, reading this now, is just a thin slice of your total self, how differently would you live? What would you fear? What would you no longer tolerate? This is why the deeper levels of Tesla's work were hidden or ignored. Because he wasn't just playing with currents and circuits, he was revealing something revolutionary, that consciousness is the true engine behind time, that the mind, when awakened, can transcend the clock, that death is simply what happens when you change your signal. In this view, the afterlife isn't a place you go to, it's a field you shift into, one you can begin to experience before your body dies. This is why some near-death experiences seem to stretch for hours, while only seconds pass on a clock. Why people see deceased relatives before they pass. Why those in deep meditative or mystical states often report seeing their future or past selves. They're not hallucinating, they're crossing into non-linear consciousness. Tesla once said, "The present is theirs, the future for which I really worked is mine." He wasn't just talking about inventions, he was talking about vision. He saw past the illusion of now, he saw that now is a choice. So how do we break free? It begins by noticing time differently. Instead of treating the past as dead, start treating it as accessible. Instead of fearing the future, realize it already exists, shaped by the frequency you're holding today. Let awe open the door. Let emotion be your guide. Let presence become your vehicle, because the soul doesn't walk, it remembers. And the more you align with that knowing, the more time begins to fold. You'll find yourself in the right place without planning. You'll say things you didn't know you knew. You'll feel echoes of people and places you've never met, because you are returning, not arriving. Thought is the bridge between worlds. Imagine this. Your thoughts aren't just private, random bursts of brain activity. They are signals, measurable, projectable, and able to ripple through space far beyond your body. This is what Nikola Tesla understood long before modern science dared to catch up. He didn't see thought as something abstract. To him, it was a precise technology, a tool, a current that, when properly directed, could do far more than shape your mood or influence your decisions. Thought, he believed, was a vehicle for interdimensional connection. This is why Tesla worked tirelessly with frequencies, harmonics, and waves. He wasn't simply fascinated with lighting up a city or inventing wireless communication. That was the surface. The deeper aim was always the same: to understand how the invisible world responds to intention, and the key medium between the seen and unseen, thought. In this way, Tesla's view aligns with ancient esoteric teachings, from the Hermetic principle of mentalism, all is mind, to the Eastern understanding of manas, the Sanskrit word for the mind as a bridge between soul and reality. If all things begin in thought, then every word, every form, and every experience is an echo of consciousness casting its signal across the field of time. Tesla knew this wasn't poetic fluff, it was law. He reportedly believed that thoughts had measurable speed, pressure, and influence. He once suggested that human brains operate like receivers, just like a radio. We don't invent thoughts, we tune into them. We filter a greater stream of consciousness through the prism of our personal perception. Which brings us to the afterlife. What if death doesn't sever communication, it just shifts the frequency? What if those we consider gone aren't truly gone, but instead exist at a vibratory level we've forgotten how to listen to? And what if thought, pure, focused thought, is the thread that allows contact across these veils? Many mystics have long claimed this is true. Indigenous elders, Tibetan monks, Sufi poets, and even early Christian mystics all believed that communication between the living and the dead was possible, not through rituals alone, but through concentrated awareness, through silent, clear thought. But Tesla went further. He believed that if thoughts were properly aligned, emotionally charged, focused in silence, and amplified by intention, they could cross the boundary of death itself. He didn't just suggest we could sense other realms. He believed we could communicate with them, not in the way Hollywood portrays, with flashing lights and dramatic seances, but with quiet, steady intention, with presence. He once said, "If you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration." That wasn't just a note on physics, it was a map to spiritual technology. Because thought is not simply language, it is frequency, and every frequency has a destination. This is why, in the quiet of your own room, you've sometimes felt like someone was near. Why in your deepest grief you suddenly thought of someone and felt comfort. It wasn't coincidence. It was contact, not verbal, but vibrational. And yet, most people dismiss this. Why? Because we've been taught to worship only what we can measure. Because if thought really is this powerful, we must become responsible for everything we think. That level of accountability is terrifying, but Tesla believed it was the doorway to freedom. In fact, he lived it. Much of Tesla's greatest insights came in moments of total solitude. He would often sit for hours, sometimes days, in silence, thinking, not brainstorming, but receiving. He called it visualization, but not in the way pop culture uses the word. He didn't visualize outcomes for motivation. He saw machines in full form, rotating in his mind's eye, down to the screws and parts, long before he ever built them. That kind of mental precision requires a clarity of channel, and that channel, Tesla believed, was universal. It wasn't coming from him, it was coming through him. So what does this have to do with life after death? Everything. Because if your thoughts are a bridge, then in death that bridge still stands. The difference is, most people forget how to walk it. Tesla's hidden belief was this: if you can learn to silence the noise of your conditioned mind, if you can refine the frequency of your thoughts to one of peace, presence, and deep emotion, then you can continue communicating with souls who are no longer physically embodied. Not always with words, often with images, emotions, sudden clarity, or symbolic dreams. In fact, Tesla once hinted that dreams are the most direct method of interdimensional thought transfer. Not dreams formed from mental clutter, but the deep ones, the ones that stay with you, that feel more real than waking life. Those are not dreams, they're messages, they're meetings, they're frequencies syncing across realms, and the more sensitive your thought becomes, the more of these moments you begin to notice. You'll see patterns in numbers, hear songs with lyrics that strike your soul. Think of someone and get a message from them, or feel an answer arrive before you've even asked the question. You're not crazy, you're tuning in. Tesla believed this is humanity's forgotten birthright, not just to survive in the material world, but to move between worlds with grace, with intention, with awareness. But for this to happen, you must protect your thought. In a world constantly bombarding you with fear, comparison, and distraction, your thoughts are the first frontier of your freedom. When you think in confusion, you emit static. When you think in clarity, you create pathways, and when you think with love, you light up the field. Memory is not recall, it's a return. When you think of memory, you likely picture a mental cabinet, names, faces, events, and facts you store in the back of your mind and pull out when needed. But what if memory is not a cabinet at all? What if it's a bridge, a map, even a portal? Nikola Tesla did not see memory as mere brain function. To him, memory was electromagnetic. It was energetic imprinting, not limited to the physical brain, but connected to something far more expansive. If thought was frequency, Tesla believed memory was the residue of frequency, waves that do not vanish, but echo through time and space, always accessible to the tuned mind. In this view, memory doesn't come from you. It flows to you, and that changes everything. When people describe near-death experiences, they often speak about their life flashing before their eyes. But it's not a series of thoughts, it's a reliving. They say they feel every moment, every emotion, every word they've ever spoken, sometimes not only from their perspective, but from the viewpoint of others they affected. How is that possible? Tesla would say, memory is not confined to your brain, it is stored in the field, the quantum field. The same field that stores sound, light, and electricity also holds you, every version of you that's ever existed, and perhaps even the ones you haven't yet met. This is not fantasy. It's physics with spiritual implications. This understanding aligns with ancient teachings as well. In Hindu philosophy, the Akashic records are said to be a dimension where every soul's journey, past, present, and future, is recorded. Mystics claim they can access these records through meditation or altered states. In the Kabbalistic tradition, memory is seen not as past but as presence. The Hebrew word for remember, zakar, implies bringing into reality. This is crucial. It means memory is not backward-looking, it's creative. When you remember, you are not recalling, you're re-entering. Tesla believed that every human emits and receives information at all times, and memory is the trail left by those transmissions. When you have a sudden vision, or an image flashes in your mind for no reason, that's not fantasy. That may be a bleed-through from another frequency, a soul memory, a forgotten version of you speaking through the layers. But what does this mean for the afterlife? It means death does not erase memory, it expands it. When the physical body falls away, the filters drop. You no longer remember only your current lifetime. You begin to feel the fullness of all your soul's expressions, the people you loved, the roles you played, the mistakes you made, not as punishments or rewards, but as understandings. That is the real judgment. Awareness. And that awareness begins before death, if you're paying attention. You've felt it before. The eerie familiarity of a place you've never been. The knowing of someone you just met. The dream that leaves you shaken even though it told you nothing. These are not accidents. They are activations. You're remembering beyond the brain. You're touching the field. Tesla would say your memory is a signature. It's what connects your soul to the field and to others. The more conscious you become of it, the more memory begins to act like a magnet, pulling you into alignment with who you truly are and where you've truly been. This is why so many spiritual awakenings feel like remembering, because they are. When you start to wake up, you don't learn something new. You realize you already knew. You begin to remember ancient truths, ancient emotions, ancient versions of yourself, the pain and the power. You realize you've made these choices before, and you may feel grief, not because it's new, but because you forgot. That forgetting is by design. Tesla understood that forgetting is part of the soul's evolution. To forget, and then to remember, is the loop through which consciousness becomes whole. If you remembered everything all at once, your nervous system would overload. But as you become more still, more present, more aligned, memory begins to rise gently, like light emerging through water. That's why the veil is so thin when you sleep. In dreams, your mind relaxes and your brainwaves shift. You enter a frequency closer to death, and therefore closer to memory. Not memory of this life alone, but of lives you've lived, people you've loved, wisdom you've carried. And it means that when death comes, it won't be a blackout. It will be a remembering, a reconnection. Tesla's deeper legacy was not about invention. It was about transmission. He was trying to teach the world how to become receivers of information, of intuition, of frequency. And memory was a key signal in that process. The more you honor it, not as nostalgia but as guidance, the more you will find yourself standing at the edges of two worlds. Alive here, remembering there. Emotion is the code of the soul. If energy cannot be created or destroyed, as science tells us, then what truly happens to the energy behind our thoughts, our intentions, our emotions when we die? It doesn't disappear, it transforms, it travels, and, according to Nikola Tesla's deeper philosophical insights, it carries with it an imprint more personal than any fingerprint, your emotional signature. To Tesla, emotion was not just a response to life, it was the essence of it. Every feeling you have generates a vibrational signal. Anger, joy, guilt, love, fear. Each one radiates out from your body like a ripple through a pond. This isn't metaphor, it's measurable. Electromagnetic fields around the heart and brain shift with every emotion. And these shifts don't stop when the body dies. Tesla believed they remain encoded in the quantum field. Your emotion, in other words, is your soul's voice. That's why emotion holds such power, not only in shaping your life, but in shaping your afterlife experience. What you carry in your heart when you leave this body is the frequency you will immediately resonate with. This is echoed in countless near-death testimonies, which describe entering states not of judgment, but of vibration, feeling pulled toward light or shadow, peace or chaos, based on what the person brought with them emotionally. Tesla would likely interpret this through the lens of resonance, like attracts like. In energy systems, frequencies either cancel each other or amplify one another. In spiritual terms, if you die full of fear, unresolved resentment or denial, your consciousness naturally attracts spaces within the field that match that unresolved energy. But if you cross over with acceptance, love, and a sense of inner peace, you rise to lighter frequencies, what some might call heaven, though Tesla would have called it alignment. This view is not unique to Tesla. Many ancient traditions have taught that the emotional state of the soul at death determines its next passage. In the Egyptian Book of the Dead, the heart is weighed, not the mind, not the deeds, the heart. It must be as light as a feather. In Buddhist teachings, the bardo is influenced by your attachments and aversions. Even early Christian mystics spoke of the purifying fire of divine love, not as punishment, but as a refining of the soul's emotional debris. Tesla's brilliance was in suggesting that this was not just spiritual truth, it was energetic law. So what do you do with this now, while you're still alive? You begin to clear your emotional field. You don't wait for death to purge the weight. You learn how to transmute it now. Because every time you truly forgive someone, every time you speak a truth you were too afraid to share, every time you sit with your pain instead of running from it, you release dense frequencies and begin to resonate higher. Not for show, not for enlightenment points, but because your soul is trying to lighten its field. Tesla once said, "The day science begins to study non-physical phenomena, it will make more progress in 1 decade than in all the previous centuries of its existence." Emotion is that non-physical phenomenon. It doesn't have a form, but it moves matter, it reshapes cells, it alters timelines, and it persists beyond death. This is why people often feel the presence of deceased loved ones not through sound or sight, but through emotion. Suddenly you feel warmth, you feel remembered, you feel comforted. That's not wishful thinking, that's resonance. That is the emotional frequency of another soul brushing against your field, reminding you that no energy, no love is ever truly lost. And it's why suppressing emotion is so spiritually dangerous. When you bury your feelings, you don't erase them. You store them until death or trauma or awakening forces them to rise. Tesla might say that repressed emotion creates static in the field. It distorts your signal. That's why emotional healing is not optional if you seek clarity. It's the prerequisite, not just for happiness in this life, but for coherence in the next. The afterlife is not a destination, it's a continuation of your current frequency. If you don't make peace here, you will seek it there. If you don't learn to express your soul here, you will wander until you do. That's not punishment, it's design. You are a vibrational being learning how to refine your tone until it sings in harmony with truth itself. So feel deeply, heal honestly, express courageously. These are not weaknesses, they are sacred technologies. They are the codes your soul uses to navigate this world and the next. Tesla's hidden legacy wasn't just about electricity, it was about spiritual circuitry. He wanted us to understand that we are fields within fields, sending signals across time, space, and dimensions, and that our emotions are not only our guides, They are our passwords. When your time comes, you won't be asked what you did. You'll be asked what you felt. And if your answer is love, raw, real, unconditional love, then no door will be closed to you. Because in the end, the afterlife isn't some distant land. It is simply the next frequency your soul is ready to enter. And if Tesla was right, then you're already part of it. You're already sending signals. You're already standing between worlds. All that remains is to tune your emotional frequency and watch the universe answer back. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, feel free to subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching.